Hey guys, welcome back to another MeetEdgar live stream. Excited to be chatting today all about remote work. Now, I know a lot of people are actually transitioning back into their offices. A lot of people have been told that they can work remotely for the rest of the year. People are loving remote work. People are hating remote work. Wherever you are in your journey, there's always an opportunity to improve your efficiency and to make sure that we are getting the most out of the time during our working hours. So if you're not aware, MeetEdgar has actually been a completely distributed and remote company since the very beginning in 2014. Our founder, Laura Roeder, actually decided to set our company up as a remote team. So we've got some years of experience in realizing how to get a cohesive, excited, and motivated team to work together to produce and create something that's really useful in the world in a really efficient and really motivating way. So we want to share some of those tips today, and I would love to hear from you guys. If you are someone who started working remotely recently, how do you like it? Let me know in the comments below. I personally think remote work is way more valuable for my own work tendencies. I tend to be way more focused, get a lot more done when I have that remote control. And bonus, you see my little puppy in the background there. You get to hang out with fun pups all day too. But I'd love to know what you guys like, what you guys hate. So leave it in the comments below. I'm super curious. But essentially, one of the main things that you want to do, especially as a business owner, is to make sure that you are setting really explicit goals. This is one of the most important things. And I know you're probably tuning me out right now because you're like, Megan, that's so simple. But truly, if you are not setting yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily goals for your entire team that everyone is aware of, it's likely you're not all working towards the same mission, which is going to create a little bit of friction down the road. So it is really important to break these things apart and actually dive into why these goals matter with your team. So don't just present the goals as here's how we're going to get there, but really dive into the why so that everyone feels like their individual work is contributing towards a larger goal that they understand completely. Understanding things really does motivate us as humans. So take some time, even if you need to block out an entire day for yourself to sit down and do this yearly, quarterly, monthly, and weekly planning. Go and do that and encourage your team to do that as well. Having clarity around goals really will help you achieve them in a more fun and faster way. So make it really simple too. Just ask yourself, do you know what your goals are for these timeframes? If not, walk it back and make sure that it's really granular and something that people can latch onto. And when you're setting these goals, really make sure that you're doing it in a way people can identify with. One of the things about working remotely with distributed teams is the sense of a shared identity can sometimes be lost in our work habits. So are you setting up a shared identity for your team? Or if it's just you as a solopreneur for yourself, again, on why you're doing that, on why you're one team. That's actually one of our core values here at MeetEdgar, is this idea of a one team mentality. So we're not in different departments. Like, for example, I work on the customer experience team. However, my mindset isn't that I'm on this team and I'm working towards these team goals. I do a ton of work with marketing and a ton of work with our product team because essentially we're all working towards these one goal that has been established. When you're establishing goals, get voices from every department, from every level to go into this. I know a lot of the time this stuff can seem simple, but it really does make a difference. And sometimes it's that simple stuff that we just blow over and don't actually take any action on, right? One thing that I think makes this really clear on why it works so well is there's actually been a study done. It was done with airplane pilots, and this idea of shared identity came out, and the fact that pilots who didn't have any late plane routes, who use their fuel most efficiently, all of these markers of success for pilots, what they did when they spoke to their entire team is they always used the words we. It wasn't us pilots against you flight attendants and you ground crew on what you're doing. It's the entire we of that shared identity of getting this plane from one place to the other on time with the most efficient fuel use. Same with your company, right? Make sure that you are sharing this we spirit, that it's not, the development team is launching this new product to our software. It's the entire team is launching this new product, and we need voices. And the more diverse voices that you can have when it goes into creating something, whether it's your coaching service or whether it's your software, the better that is going to be accomplished. So really take that to heart. Again, those pilots who use the language we for everyone versus pilots who use the language we just for the pilots and not for any of the crew members, those were the ones who had subpar times on their flight records. So these things are transferable from industry to industry. So take that to heart and make sure you're always creating a shared identity and that you have this one team mentality going throughout your entire company. Or if you are someone who's a solopreneur right now and looking to grow, put these things into your system that you're really excited to implement once you do start growing your business. And really, when it comes down to it, the lack of a shared identity is something that also goes into one of the things that most work experts say is one of the most important things that successful teams have, which is a concept called psychological safety. So psychological safety, it's kind of self-explanatory, but we'll dig into a little bit is, do you feel comfortable bringing up any idea to anyone on your team at any time? Do you feel psychologically safe to bring that forward? And not only kind of company ideas, but anything going on in your life circumstantially that might be affecting your work. These things talked about openly are some of the most important ways that your team can stay strong and really consistently push through problems and grow as a company. So make sure that shared identity and psychological safety goes really deep into the core of your company, especially when working remotely, when we sometimes forget that there are other people working on these goals with us, when we might just be sitting and staring at our Slack or our communication system thinking, oh my gosh, my kid is really sick. I don't know what to do. How do I communicate this? If you're wasting a lot of time worrying about that, that probably is a signal that you don't have awesome psychological safety on your team. And there's something that needs to change because this is taking away from your work ability in the entire grand scheme of things. If these little things are throwing you off and you're not sure how to communicate them to your team effectively in a remote setting. So make sure that you have this, it's going to really increase the ability for you to have constructive conflict on your team when you're having differences and communicating with people about the way that your company, the direction your company should go. If you have this psychological safety and you're able to argue, often the way that you're going to have an outcome from that argument is going to be a much stronger solution than if you just had one voice in the beginning anyway. So I think that's something that's really important here at Team Edgar as well, is we're not afraid to argue with each other about our opinions. It's definitely something that you have to get used to. If you're someone who's afraid of conflict, I'll raise my hand and be there right there with you. But developing those muscles of psychological safety and having this conflict in a constructive way will truly make your team quite a bit stronger. And when you're doing like goal setting activities and when you're doing things on developing your team identity, really make sure that you are getting in there and telling people how their individual contributions are going towards the entire team goal. We work harder as human beings when we see our individual contributions actually moving the needle on something. So you could do something as fun of actually having a visual component to this. At MeetEdgar, when we were working on our community members' numbers, we actually created a little octopus thermometer that we would fill up at each team meeting so we could visually see how well we were doing. That could be something that you take to motivate your team and to show people how, each one individual client that you get matters. Or, each and every step that you take, these small things that everyone on the team is doing is leading up to the bigger goal. How can you communicate that well with your team so people feel like they should put more effort in because it's moving the needle towards that really big goal? Another thing that we do a lot here at Team Edgar is we remember our company's history and our company's values on a pretty regular basis. We have a chat room called Edgar Announcements in our Slack that we just do a lot of announcements in. And today's was actually a reminder about when and how and best to use your PTO days. And that was a great way of reminding us, hey, these things exist here. We'll look at how many PTO days you have by going over XYZ. We could go in there and be reminded that, hey, taking breaks is really important so that you can come back refreshed. And that's one of our company values, is having that work-life balance. So are there ways that you can have your company values show up in a daily basis to remind people of what and why you're working towards these goals? I know I'm becoming a little bit of a broken record saying goals, 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 but truly having those shared goals, everything that your company is structured upon with these values should be feeding into these goals anyway, right? Cool. The history part, I think, is really interesting too, because if you learn like why your company was started and where it's going, and if you have those touch points, it makes people a lot more excited to be a part of this entire journey. I actually just read the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who was the creator of Nike. If you've never read it before, it's an awesome story. It's one of the best kind of pushing through and making scrappy ways to get to this multi-billion-dollar company. Anyway, it's fantastic. But one of the things at the end of the book that they were talking about is on the Nike campus, they've actually named some of the streets in their campus there after some of the major 4 or 5 founders who started Nike with Phil Knight. And that's just a way that they're reminding the new people where their company came from, right? Having these visual cues set up reminds people of that mentality of being scrappy, of making sure that you have that attitude to never quit and to keep going and to accomplish your goals. So they kind of call them the Nike founding fathers. So what could you do in that with your company? I know you probably don't have a street you could name after them, but there are other ways that you could drop your company history into your day-to-day workflows that will make people remember where they started from. And really that's going to motivate where your company is going and keep that value system strong. Other things that we do really recommend doing here at MeetEdgar is really make sure that you have set working hours. That's something that we do. We obviously don't overlap the entire day, having people on the East Coast and West Coast, but the majority of our days do overlap, and we have it in our Slack system, our working hours. If we're taking a break, if there's anything strange going on, like if you have to drop your kids off at school or something like that, that all goes in your Slack settings. So anyone at any moment can know exactly how to find you if you're not available at any certain time during the day. However, being available to do these meetings and to make sure that we have FaceTime and Slack time, and it's not just an unstructured setting, has been really helpful in our entire team being successful working towards something, because you have different stakeholders in different areas of the company who you might be waiting on for a certain asset in order to release something new to the software or in order to send out a marketing email. And having people available to be able to provide that for you is pretty important. So if you're thinking about staying as a remote company, 100% we recommend having set working hours. And we always also like to say, meetings are important. FaceTime over Zoom is important, of course, but you want to always only hold meetings when they matter. That's sort of our mantra here at MeetEdgar, is meetings when they matter, because a lot of the time, especially working remotely, it can be communicated over an email or a task management system like Asana, and you can ask for the deliverables that you need in a much more structured way, rather than having to hop on a call and get that Zoom fatigue that I know a lot of us are feeling right now. So ask yourself if the intention of the meeting, what the intention of the meeting is, if it's necessary, or if it can be solved in an email. Use your time as wisely as possible and cut back on that meeting fatigue. Same thing with thinking about sort of ways that you can communicate what's going on in the company easily remotely. Different departments here at Edgar do it differently, but ways that I like to things that I like to share that I think do really well in this area is like our operations team has something called the top 3, where every week they take their top 3 goals and they write it out in a Slack thread together. And those are the top 3 things that by the end of the week, they must accomplish, right? And this goes to the fact that you want to be doing less, higher quality. That's going to move your company in the right direction, better than being super scattered, trying to do a ton of things at kind of a mediocre quality. So those will be the top 3 things that you focus on for the week. At the end of the week, they do a check-in on how they did, what's still out missing, stuff like that. So that's one way to keep the entire company up to date on what's going on and the most important things that you are working on. The reason I know about this and I'm not on our ops team is because it's in our public Slack channel. So I can see what they're working on. And if perhaps I have something to contribute, I can just pop in and contribute. That's the beauty of the transparency of using a communication system like Slack rather than doing this sort of communication over email. So if you still haven't set up something like Slack or Microsoft Teams or Skype, definitely recommend moving your communication for your company over to that medium rather than email, because you're missing out on a lot of collaboration and ideas that your entire team might have that could be really useful for you. Other things that people do on our team is Our developers have like a daily stand-up where our Slack notification goes daily stand-up. They put what their main goals are working for the day, and then they have a weekly retrospective at the end of the week to say how they went, what went well, what went wrong, stuff like that, so that they can improve the next week. Great sort of practice for making sure everyone's on the same page, working towards those same goals, and that you're taking time to reflect a little bit on how you can improve the following week so that you can make sure as a team you continuously up-level your work. The last example, a lot of people will do like daily summaries of their work here and just put out a bulleted list of everything you accomplished for that day. Again, just a great way to increase transparency. It doesn't take long. It takes a couple minutes at the end of your day. And if there's something that you see someone's working on that you can contribute to, you can go ahead and jump in on that conversation. So get creative, look for ways to be a little more transparent in what you're working on. And even if you're not staying as a remote team, I think these practices are so important to keep, just because the more voices that you have working on a project, the better it is always going to turn out. All right, so doing things like having these structured and set working hours, especially working remotely, I know you've heard probably on a million different streams about how important it is to still treat your day as a normal day. But I want to share some creative things that Team Edgar does. People actually do things like fake their commute. So they'll like take a walk for 30 minutes before work, or hop on a stationary bicycle for 30 minutes before work. No one at Team Edgar has done this yet, but if you are someone who loves to drive, perhaps go on a drive, listen to a podcast for 30 minutes, come back home, right? These things can really help mimic the structure of your day, and that takes you out of your home environment and into your work environment. Same thing with at the end of the day. You need to have that sort of task switching availability for you. So like, can you do a yoga class at the end of the day? Can you walk your dog at the end of the day? When you come back into your house, boom, that's it. You're good to go, and make sure that you're in home vibe and not work vibe anymore. All right. Other things that I like to kind of chat to you guys about is making sure you're not forgetting about the morale building aspect of remote work. So taking 5 minutes to like get to know someone on a more personal level is really important, and it can save you like hours of work down the line. And I think a lot of the time we forget about that aspect of asking someone a personal question or asking someone a fun question to get to know them better. Makes it more likely that when you need something from them on a project, that communication is already established as an open communication channel. You feel comfortable with, who you're talking to, and it's just more likely that you'll reach out in a manner that you'll get a better response, right? So make sure that you take time, whether it's doing what we do here at MeetEdgar, which is a question of the day in our Slack channel. A question of the day comes up, we all answer it throughout the day. Great way to get to know the other sides of your team and have that sort of team morale available for you. Or just, schedule like a virtual lunch with someone where you both eat lunch at the same time, so you can have these sort of unstructured conversations that you don't really get in the remote work world, but can lead to really important discoveries and communication along the way for your company. You can really do cool things about like humanizing your working remotely by doing things like give yourself a tour of your home office with your team, see what other people are really optimizing in their office space. This will really help you that you have a reminder of the human side of your coworkers, which can be lost when you're doing things virtually all the time, and perhaps you haven't seen them in a while. So think about those creative ways, again, just to humanize your brand in that way. And really understand that the fact that you really want to make sure you have the structure and discipline. And I think there's a lot of quotes out there, a lot of them from like military leaders, a lot of them from productivity experts that really go into this idea that the more structure and the more discipline you can have, the more freedom your life will actually have, right? So look for what you need to structure and discipline in your workday so that your life can have a little bit more freedom in it. Because when we're working from home, the tendency for a lot of people can be just to work continuously. And that's not going to lead to your best work. So structure in your breaks. People here at Team Edgar will do things like work for 50 minutes and then take a 10-minute walk around the block, or a 10-minute time to do some kettlebell exercises. They'll come back refreshed, ready to work a little bit harder. Or perhaps you could take a 5-minute break every 45 minutes to go put the laundry in or switch it over. Or you could do something like empty the dishwasher while you're listening to a work podcast. You'll come back, and it's this idea that I I like to call shower thoughts. It's this idea that some of your best thoughts about how to innovate will come to you in these spaces that you're not actually doing the work, because we get so granular and into that work that we forget that bigger picture. And our brain and our subconscious is always working in the background, right? So if you come to a tough problem that you're not solving, don't feel like you have to sit at your computer all the time. Get up for 5 minutes, do a little something else, come back with a fresh perspective, and you'll be surprised at the new ideas that you're able to generate. All right, be kind to yourself out there. And like I said, I'm dying to know if you guys love remote work, if you're hating remote work, what you're taking from this. If you're interested in learning more of Team Edgar's remote work tips, there is a link in the bottom of this description, and it goes to a landing page we made. That's meetedgar.com/remote. That has all of our remote work resources and blog posts and videos and stuff like that. So check it out. Let me know. Thanks so much for joining today, guys. And I will see you again tomorrow. Happy Monday, everyone.